It's been a while since I've covered Paul Saladino, the sugar addict, on this channel, but unfortunately, well, for me, and fortunately for you, someone emailed me a newsletter from Paul Saladino, apparently. Because, you see, the thing is since I'm not subscribed to his newsletter, because I'm a rational human being that isn't addicted to carbohydrates in a value of 280 to 320 grams a day.
I eat 280 to 320 grams of carbohydrates a day.
I don't see what he's actually propagandizing people with. I don't see the misinformation that he's promulgating to other people directly to them in an email. These ignorant, beguiled followers, frankly. They have been had, okay? But now we're going to get a glimpse into this. So if you don't know what Paul Saladino is telling his viewers and telling his subscribers, well, here's a glimpse into it. So let's get started here. All right, from Paul Saladino, MD, sent Sunday, May 18th, 2025 at 9:13 in the morning. Okay, I will be covering up the email that's on the screen, the person that actually received this, okay? Don't worry about that. Subject, anti-glucose spike supplements equals ridiculous. Well, Paul Saladino and I agree on something, great. But as I always say on this channel, just because you arrive at the same conclusion doesn't mean that you did any of your math right, so to speak. And if you didn't do your math right, then you really don't understand the concept, do you? At all. And therefore you shouldn't be trusted, okay? At all. Everyone knows situations like that in their math class where someone would get the same answer as you did, and you'd both be correct, but they did it completely wrong. They didn't know what they were doing. They just guessed, okay? Let's see what he has to say. You guys have probably seen those anti-glucose spike formulas floating around, ... Yes. The kind of supplements pushed by Glucose Goddess or other biohackers. Yes, ridiculous. I've covered Glucose Goddess on this channel. However, to give as much grace as possible, because we're objective on this channel, at least Glucose Goddess understands the damage of glucose, Paul. At least she understands that, all right? She understands the damage that glucose spikes induce, okay? She just wants to pseudo-sophisticate and jump through mental gymnastics in order to justify consuming the damn thing still, just by consuming other fiber and all that stuff with it. It's just ridiculous. These contain ingredients like berberine and cinnamon with the goal of lowering glucose spikes after consuming carbohydrates. Yes, exactly. And also the clinical data surrounding this, like that actually supports the use of this to reduce glucose spikes, is quite ambiguous. There's actually, I mean, if you look at the studies, I would suspect that they're very uninformative when it comes to that. So anyway, all marketed with fear-based messaging about the dangers of your blood sugar temporarily rising after a meal. Okay, so now we're already getting into problems, okay? Not too egregious yet, but still a problem. All marketed with fear-based messaging, well, intentional-based messaging, you could call it, okay? We're not telling people to live in fear. We're telling people to live intentionally. That's the key, Paul. In fact, Paul, years ago, you said the exact same thing. It was a good message, as long as you apply it appropriately. No, we're telling people to live intentionally, Paul, okay? So not fear-based. About the dangers, quote-unquote, of your blood sugar temporarily rising. Okay, so dangers, we didn't know what he was referring to. We didn't know the context. Now we know. Blood sugar temporarily rising after eating a meal. Okay, so a few things here. The main thing being the rising. No, we're talking about spiking, Paul. We're not just talking about rising. Your blood sugar should rise after a meal if you're eating sufficient protein. I just covered this in the last video that I just finished recording about 3 minutes ago, okay? About Coach Steven's anecdote that he brought to the scene, okay? Now, whether or not that uploaded for you yet, that's up in the air. It depends on whether this video is shorter or longer than that video, okay? If it's shorter, you will have already seen the video. If this video is longer than that one, you haven't seen the video yet. That's how it goes. So, anyway, yeah, we're talking about spiking, Paul. You don't want to spike your blood sugar because that's dangerous, okay? That causes harm every single time you do it. You know how I know that? Because if the value that your blood sugar spikes to after the meal would be considered diabetic, if it were chronically elevated to that degree, well, doesn't that tell you something? Because the only reason why it would be considered dangerous in a diabetic situation if it were at that level is because at that level, it induces harm, okay? My blood glucose at the level it is right now, maintaining that level for 24 hours isn't diabetic, and it's not a problem, is it? Because it's not inducing unnecessary harm. But if your blood sugar spikes and stays at that level, well, that's harmful at that level. So you don't want to spike it to that level either, Paul, okay? Ever heard of reactive hypoglycemia that can happen as well? Yeah, Paul, not a good thing, okay? When you have a spike in insulin that corresponds to the spike in glucose, that's a very anabolic situation that is conducive to storing and creating lots of fat. Okay? So it's a conducive way of storing fat. And what happens, even according to you, Paul, you're aware of this, what happens whenever you get too fat and you reach what's called your personal fat threshold, where you reach maximum hypertrophy and hyperplasia of fat cells? Do you become insulin resistant and then diabetic? Hell, Paul. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Okay? Which is where we get to the second point that I already covered. You put the word temporarily here. Temporarily. Yeah, until it's not temporary. What's the required amount of carbohydrates again? And what's our efficiency for gluconeogenesis again? Is it that of hypercarnivores, which implies that we had an evolutionary pressure on us to develop that because we weren't consuming carbohydrates? And the fact that we have maintained it today means that we're still hypercarnivorous and therefore low carbohydrate animals? No carbohydrate to very low carbohydrate, really, which I've covered the nuance behind that before. 20 grams or so. You're still low carb. Okay? Anyway, fuck. Look, I'm sure they're well-intentioned here, ... Okay? Great. You know what? I will say, it is really refreshing to see that this wasn't written with ChatGPT. The amount of things I see that are written with ChatGPT is unbelievable. It is just inauthentic. This is what happens. Every tool can be abused, and it's being abused every single day. Stop writing your shit with ChatGPT. It's one thing if you make titles for something and you put some humanity into the title, you like rearrange some things. Okay, it's a title for something. But like making your entire script with it, okay, we're losing humanity. We're going to be brute animals at this point. Like, it's ridiculous. Okay? I mean, no different from an animal in the wild. You know, type on ChatGPT, tell me how to respond to my manager. Make more friendly. And then it's going to give you the response. You're going to beat your chest. And, ooh, 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 ooh. Okay, let's speak like humans. Okay? All right. Anyway, it doesn't really make this too much better, though, in terms of the content. And I respect anyone trying to help people make better decisions for their health. But I strongly disagree with this notion and would gladly welcome a conversation on the matter. Would you? Would you? I actually tried to invite Glucose Goddess onto the podcast to talk about this. No answer yet. Rolling eyes emoji. Well, people are busy sometimes, Paul, and also I wouldn't want to talk to you either. Anyway, here's my position on this whole sugar demonizing, glucose spike blocking trend and why it needs to go away. Pronto. Well, we both agree about this, but we have different reasons. My reason is the actual sensible, rational, and correct one, which is just stop consuming the glucose, okay? If you're getting too much cyanide in your food and it's harming you too much and it's making you symptomatic, well, why don't you remove the cyanide instead of finding ways to continue consuming those foods just with something else that may or may not also be inducing harm in a different way that may reduce the impact of cyanide to that degree that you're consuming. It's ridiculous. It's the same philosophy behind, oh, well, I have the symptoms, so let me take a drug to fix it. Oh, this drug has side effects, so let me take another drug that fixes the side effects of this drug. And then, oh, this one has side effects of its own. Stop consuming the damn thing that's causing the issue in the first place. Okay? Stop it. Because if you don't, you're addicted. You're addicted. You're an addict. Sorry. You're an addict. You need to accept it. The root cause of all disease is external. That is a fundamental philosophy that is actually completely opposite of what the Western medicine philosophy is of disease, which is that it's all inherently due to your body being flawed. Inherently. Your genes that have evolved for billions of years are flawed. Did you know that? According to a 40-year-old. What's 40 divided by 3 billion multiplied by 100 so you get a percentage? It's people that have existed for that percentage of the amount of time that your genes have existed are telling you what your body should and shouldn't be doing. Hilarious! Oh, man. So, anyway, yeah, Paul says that you should just keep spiking your sugar all the time, multiple times a day, by the way. All right, glucose rising after eating carbohydrates is normal human physiology, in bold. Okay, dying from cyanide poisoning is also normal physiology, so does that mean that you should continue consuming cyanide? Getting fat from consuming lots of carbohydrates and being, you know, a human being that stimulates insulin secretion to a very high degree on a quotidian basis, regularly, very frequently, on multiple times in every given day, that's also normal physiology. Being fat is normal physiology given the circumstances, okay? That does not have any bearing on what you should and shouldn't be doing, okay? Yes, when you consume carbohydrates, your body is supposed to respond by having a spike in blood sugar that's followed by a precipitous trough in the blood sugar, by having a precipitous rise in insulin, followed by a precipitous trough in insulin. You're also supposed to become reactive hypoglycemic. Your genes are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing given the circumstances, Paul. That doesn't mean that you should be consuming carbohydrates, okay? What the hell is that logic? Well, when you consume a food and it inflames you, that's exactly what the body's supposed to be doing to that food. So just continue consuming the food. What the f is that logic? Yes, your body's supposed to become inflamed when you do something that you shouldn't be doing. So should you just continue doing it? What the hell is this logic, Paul? Ridiculous and misanthropic. Very, very frustrating, in fact, and very ignorant. Very nescient, in fact, okay? It's what our bodies have been doing for hundreds of thousands of years. Now that is not true, okay? If our bodies were spiking glucose and insulin multiple times a day, every single day for hundreds of thousands of years, our efficiency for gluconeogenesis would have decreased because of negative selection pressures. You know why? Because negative selection pressures are only put in place when something that is happening is actively harmful or counterproductive to the organism. Okay? What do I mean by this? If you are spiking your blood sugar regularly every single day, you are causing glycation damage every single time. But if your efficiency for gluconeogenesis is still very high, well, you're causing even more glycation damage every single time. So there will steadily, regularly be a negative selection pressure to reduce the efficiency of gluconeogenesis so as to reduce glycation damage that occurs, okay? If you consume carbohydrates regularly. It's not really an atrophying of gluconeogenesis, you can think of it as that, but it's a negative selection pressure, okay? In an absence of a positive selection pressure to maintain that efficiency because you are consuming carbohydrates regularly. Well, our efficiency is still extremely high to the point where basically the required amount of carbohydrates is 0, exogenous carbohydrates. So what the hell are you talking about, Paul? Hundreds of thousands of years we've been doing that? No. No evidence of that, and in fact we have evidence, given our gluconeogenic efficiency, that you were just making shit up. What the f***? Oh, it gets even worse though. It's what our bodies have been doing for hundreds of thousands of years. And insulin spikes are healthy for humans. No, they're not, Paul, because insulin spikes are indicative of glucose spikes. And we already covered that in the beginning, didn't we? Okay? You're supposed to have a sufficient amount of insulin for maintenance of anabolic processes like thyroid hormone production and thyroid function and electrolyte maintenance, but that is maintained by consuming a sufficient bolus of protein for your needs. I just covered this in the last video I did with Coach Stevens' anecdote, okay? I just covered it. You, Paul, have said a lie, which is continuous ketosis regularly for years on end is harmful. No, you are conflating continuous ketosis with insufficient insulin, which are not the same things, okay? Turns out that whenever you consume a sufficient bolus of protein, your glucose will rise, but so will your ketone level, meaning that you actually go into deeper ketosis when consuming sufficient protein, because your I to G ratio actually either maintains the same level as it was before you ate food, or actually decreases, but the absolute level of insulin still increases. And it turns out that the only metric of value is the absolute concentration of insulin for whether or not your thyroid hormone levels and function and electrolyte maintenance and all that stuff is going to be maintained or not. And it is. Go check out Coach Stevens' anecdote about this if you haven't already, because guess what? I was saying this for months. Coach Steven just reinforced what I said months ago. He validated what I said. Look, like I said in that video review, I hate to say I told you so, but I did. Continuous ketosis, long-term ketosis is not bad. I've said that before on the channel because I've also conflated the two. What I've been meaning to say is insufficient insulin, because those are not the same things. Okay? Okay. So no, insulin spikes are not healthy for humans. They're indicative of a problem, actually, Paul. Hell. But here's what these anti-sugar individuals refuse to consider. Oh, good. Good. By the way, what do you mean anti-sugar? I'm anti-exogenous sugar beyond what is required. Okay? Context! Oh yes, tell us all about nuance and context, Paul, because that's a completely foreign idea to me. I totally don't engage in nuance. I totally don't play devil's advocate with myself every single waking moment of my life to the point, to actually a fault, to the point where it drives me insane, okay? I talk to myself pacing around the living room all the time. Yeah, that's an exaggeration. However, it's not that much of an exaggeration. I'll be sitting on the couch just talking out loud, thinking, and I have to stop what I'm doing and think about certain situations and write paragraphs and essays and blah, blah, blah. It's like, ugh. Anyway, people in this camp like Glucose Goddess have outright said that all sugar equals bad for humans. Okay, well, I don't say bad, I say contraindicated. No, we say they're contraindicated, which the definition is not advised as a course of treatment or procedure. Really what it means is that it is not indicated. It's not indicated. It's not appropriate to be consuming given the circumstances. Okay, Paul? They're not required for human consumption at above a certain physiological concentration in the bloodstream, which is most conducively achieved by consuming the damn thing is toxic. Okay? Fact. Absolute fundamental fact, Paul. We're done. We're done. I'm glad that you're getting paid millions of dollars, though, for saying that you should be consuming hundreds of grams a day of sugar, exogenous carbohydrates. Okay, because here's the other thing, Paul. Your sources of carbohydrates that you advocate for are also associated with a lot of other things that are not great, okay? Like fiber, all right? Fiber's not great. Okay, last I checked, we don't have a large cecum to ferment the fiber, and we actually have an appendix, which is a vestigial part of a large cecum from our primate past, which indicates, wow, were we consuming lots of fiber? No, it's not digestible, and last I checked, if you can't digest something, you shouldn't be consuming it, especially if you can't ferment it, like we just talked about, okay? And also, it's abrasive to the enteric lining. Hence why it increases mucus secretion in the first place. All of the purported benefits of fiber you can reap from a ketogenic diet, like short-chain fatty acid production. Yeah, first of all, you get short-chain fatty acids in your carnivore diet if you're consuming a carnivore diet, but also one of the main ketone bodies you produce in a ketogenic state from consuming zero carbohydrates, or at least very minimal carbohydrates, is beta-hydroxybutyrate, the primary short-chain fatty acid that is, well, lauded and is used to justify consuming fiber, okay? Just ridiculous. And there's only really two associative factors when it comes to diverticulosis, which is an outpouching or breaking down of the distal colon, which is increased fiber intake and increased bowel motions per day. And patients with diverticulosis are specifically told to go on a low fiber diet, a low residue diet to rest the bowel. Okay, so you got fiber alongside it. You've also got, I don't know, plant anti-nutrients and toxins that we don't seem to have genotypically adapted to. Okay, looking to oxalate dumping. Okay, pineapples are one of your favorites, Paul. Oxalic acid is in pineapples, along with oxalates. Two different things. Very similar, but... And then you've also got deuterium, which slows the rate at which your mitochondria function above a certain amount in the bloodstream and in the body that is most conducively achieved by consuming the damn thing. Okay, glucose itself is made with primarily deuterium in terms of the hydrogen bonds. Okay, Paul? You're telling people to consume a lot of bad things. Not just sugar, which is also a bad thing, okay? So not bad for humans. We don't use that vapid sort of facile language, okay, Paul? We use sophisticated language that actually is informative and is adequate in terms of the implications that it has, okay? That is ridiculous. Well, that is your opinion, Paul, isn't it? In bold, ooh, this must be important. There's a massive, massive difference between consuming sugar from whole food carbohydrates versus processed sugars from a Snickers bar or donuts. No, there isn't, Paul. The chemical constituents are the same, Paul. You have literally been making millions of dollars by lying to people.
There's a massive difference between consuming glucose from Snickers and consuming glucose from fruit. They're the same molecule and cause the same effects in isolation in the body, but they're different because I said so.
Give me a break. That's why when you guys ask me about glucose spikes after eating fruit or honey, so sugar, primarily fructose in honey, which is, well, the most glycating of sugars, okay? That's great. And also not detectable in an HbA1c test, directly at least. I don't worry about them at all. Well, that's great for you, but you ought to if you actually cared about your metabolism, which you clearly don't. You've probably deluded yourself into thinking that you're correct here, and it's sad. It is a sad reality. You're also misinforming hundreds of thousands of people about this. At least tens of thousands, okay? You're making people believe ridiculous nonsense, Paul. In fact, you had me for a moment, for about a month, but I'm actually intelligent. And even throughout that month, I thought, this can't be right, this can't be right. And in fact, I felt the worst that I ever felt on any diet by eating Paul's diet. And I'm not kidding. I'm not just saying that for clicks. I don't lie, okay? I don't do that. Whatever the consequences of telling the truth are the best possible things that can happen to you. It's a rule I live by. Whether or not it was due to the diet, well, I don't know, but I have a very strong feeling about it. But that's just my opinion. Every single time I would eat a meal that was fruit, honey, and meat based, all in one go, I had massive blood pressure swings. I would have a blood pressure increase, and then my face would get super red and hot. I would start sweating. I also gained 8 pounds, which was ostensibly water weight, and I lost all of that when I cut all the fruit out, which, of course, yeah. So water weight, you got water weight because of the glycogen that you fill up in your glycogen stores, sure, after you consume that much carbohydrate content, but also inflammation will cause you to hold on to more water as well. So anyway, and I don't believe there's anything in the medical literature. Well, now, see, this is what I'm talking about. You want to say the words medical literature and make it sound like, oh, you know how to really interpret that. And, ooh, that's fancy. That's sophisticated. That's science, which is the be-all, end-all of truth. Yeah, good. You're talking about human nutrition science, which isn't science at all because science requires control. I just did a video about this earlier as well. Okay? Human nutrition science is based on inferential statistics. Inferential statistics is inherently based on a flaw, that being that you can infer things about an entire population based on a small sample. Okay, that is only the case if all of your cases are identical and all confounding variables are controlled, which is impossible to achieve in the area of inferential statistics, and therefore it is theology, not science. Okay, Paul? Not to mention that ethical barriers that should very well be in place, I'm not complaining about that, but ethical barriers in the area of human nutrition science prevent you from having sufficient sample sizes for sufficient and adequate statistical power in the first place. Okay? And also causes you to have even less control than you otherwise could have, which still wouldn't be complete nor adequate, therefore, but it'd be better than what we have today. Okay? Human nutrition science is bred in circuses from the mainstream medical establishment to the general populace, basically. And that's actually one of the main fundamental tenets of my book, Contraindicated, by the way. Okay? In fact, I say this in bold. You want to talk about emboldened text? Let's see what I say here. Human nutrition science, as a whole, is bred in circuses from the mainstream medical establishment, with the intended audience being we the people. The best part is most of these scientists don't even realize that, because they actually think they're performing science and really establishing probability and risk and chance of this. And it's just ridiculous, isn't it? Anyway, so the medical literature is a bunch of bullshit, Paul, and it's stuff that you could basically use to justify any position on anything in health. You can find epidemiological studies that indicate that water is harmful. I'm not kidding. And it has nothing to do with how the study was done, okay, per se. They were done the same way as all these other epidemiological studies have been done. And I don't believe there's anything in the medical literature that shows eating fruit or honey causes diabetes. And oh my God, Paul, you can't inform upon causality in the medical literature at all. Okay, so you're right. The medical literature doesn't show that anything causes diabetes, Paul, but let me put it this way. You will not find someone that has truly pathological type 2 diabetes that isn't consuming some degree of carbohydrates, Paul. Diabetes is characterized exclusively and explicitly as chronically elevated blood glucose and nothing else. It is defined that way, and it is measured as such. Holy shit, Paul. There are certain things like seed oils and inflammation as a whole that can raise your propensity, lower the threshold by which you would have to attain or surpass in order to develop diabetes, but you will still not surpass that threshold if you are not consuming carbohydrates. And if for some reason, in some hypothetical world, you do, it is not the glucose in that situation that is the problem, because that glucose would have only been derived from your body producing it, according to your genes, which have evolved for billions of years and know exactly what they're doing. The problem would be something else that is external, because all disease, the root cause of all disease is external, that is causing you to be inflamed, lowering your threshold so markedly that you would have to attain or surpass to develop diabetes. Okay. Anyway, or has any harmful effects in humans whatsoever. Well, the word effect is the conjugate of cause, and you can't inform upon causality in human nutrition science. So you're correct in this regard, but your implications are false. Okay? In fact, the opposite has been shown. No, it hasn't been shown, because that implies a causal relationship being established. Studies show, guys. Yes, good. We already covered studies, didn't we? Studies show over and over again that these naturally occurring carbohydrate sources, with the implication that since it's natural, it's totally fine and benign, ridiculous, with their sugars, so the carbohydrates, that was just completely superfluous, wasn't it, are beneficial for human health. No, Paul, because beneficial is a cause and effect statement. Cite your study. Fruit juices are shown to improve. No, cause and effect statement, Paul. I am serious when I say that people that use this convicting language when it comes to science are completely deluded, they are arrogant, they are narcissistic, solipsistic, okay? They have a God complex, whether they realize it or not, and it needs to stop today. There is a video that was just recently released, and it's been going viral on YouTube, and it's called Why Intellectuals Are Idiots. Everyone should go ahead and watch that video today. I'm not kidding. Genius video, and it's what I've been saying on this channel and in my book for years now. Years! People are so ensconced and infatuated with their models of the universe, and it becomes dangerous. It really does become dangerous. Okay? This is fundamentally false, ridiculous, erroneous, anti-scientific, actually. A lot of people think, well, if you're throwing out an entire field of science, that's quite anti-scientific. You're an anti-science person. You're anti-science. No, I'm insistent upon the scientific method. Okay? Causality is an ideal, like God is an ideal. You strive to attain it, but you will always fail. You should strive to attain it, but you will always fail. Accept it and move on. So no, not improve. Endothelial function, as measured by what, by the way? Decrease LDL oxidation. Okay, so again, decrease is a cause and effect statement. Also, LDL oxidation, well, That happens when LDL remains in the endothelium because the injury that they are basically elicited to arrive at because of has not been surceased. Okay, what causes damage to the endothelium? Glycation. And also, you want to talk about oxidation of LDL that happens? Glycation of LDL to the same LDL molecules also happens. Great, which causes the same issue, Paul, which is a launching of inflammation on that area, causing a negative feedback loop, causing you to develop plaque. Okay, I know how atherosclerosis develops. Okay, I wrote about it in my book, Contraindicated, with graphics and everything. Okay? It's one of the longest parts of chapter 3, actually, because we go into extreme detail. Okay, so a very conducive way of, hedging against the damage of, your endothelial tissue, so your arteries, is not consuming a bunch of carbohydrates and all the other associated compounds alongside it. Okay? Deuterium, Paul, fiber. Wow, guys. Seriously. And enhanced, so another cause and effect statement, reductionism, antioxidant status. Well, what do you mean antioxidant status, Paul? Glutathione, the ratio of, reduced glutathione to oxidized glutathione? There's many things that can influence that, Paul. Hell. Honey shows strong potential. No, that is your opinion. That is a value judgment statement. As a natural aid in managing metabolic syndromes like obesity, diabetes, and hypertension. Yes, if you have diabetes, diabetes, chronically elevated blood glucose, consume a bunch of sugar. Good job, Paul. You moron. You offensive, dangerous. Okay, lowering blood sugar by consuming sugar? Wow, how great. It might be possible, but is that really what you should be doing? Hell, that's like saying, well, you can cut your legs off to lose weight. If your goal is weight loss, well, why don't you do anything to achieve it? Because the methods that you employ to achieve something are not always the most conducive, or rather the most indicated methods, are they? Some are stupid. Lowering blood sugar, reducing weight gain, which is mediated primarily by insulin. Good, okay. What's the most insulinogenic macronutrient? Improving lipid profiles. Wow, guys. So now Paul Saladino, in order to reinforce and bolster his ideology to other people that you should be consuming hundreds of grams of carbohydrates a day, is now buying in to the lipid heart hypothesis, which was proven to be based on lies, in order to aggrandize his philosophy, which just shows how unprincipled he is. Oh, I'll only use the lipid heart hypothesis. I'll only give credence to it as long as I can use it to reinforce my ideology. Yeah, great. No, things are true always, or they're false always, Paul. That's how it goes. Okay, so the whole lipid heart hypothesis, nonsense. It was literally founded in fraud. We already know this, and we know that LDL is not the cause of heart disease. Okay? If there were causal in heart disease, atherosclerosis would occur in both sides of the vascular system, the venous side and the arterial side, and they don't. And not only that, but not only do they only occur, or does it only occur, on the arterial side, it only occurs in set sites, which just so happen to be predictable, by the way. We always know where they will develop. And they're the areas of the vascular system that experience the most turbulent blood flow exacerbated by hypertension. Okay? Paul, atherosclerotic plaque consists of 1 plus or minus 1% cholesterol, foam cells, LDL particles, any of that. It's largely scar tissue. This is just ridiculous, isn't it? Enhancing insulin sensitivity as measured by what? Paul, measured by what? Because you can't directly measure insulin resistance or insulin sensitivity. Okay? Protecting pancreatic function. Yes, by consuming lots of glucose. Yep, great job. Reducing oxidative stress as measured by what? And supporting vascular health. Right, so basically he's making all these causal claims about honey, and then he puts a colon, and then this study here. A review on the protective effects. So no, not protective effects of honey against metabolic syndrome. What is metabolic syndrome? That is a construct. Holy shit. What was the population studied? Okay, what was the sample size? What was the signal to noise ratio as a result of the poor sample size? Okay, how long did the study go on for? All right, so I'm not even gonna look the study up because I think he just screenshot something here from the study. There are even studies showing that honey improves. No, there's no studies that show anything improves anything, Paul. Markers in diabetic patients. Markers, wow, markers. One such study found that natural honey consumption reduced cardiovascular risk factors, not risk factors, associative factors, in patients with type 2 diabetes. Conclusion, the results of this study demonstrate that 8-week consumption in what amount and of what honey, and in what people, what was their genotype, what was their phenotype, what was their health history, what was their age, what else were they doing, how well were they controlled, was this reported consumption, what else were they consuming, what else did they change during this period of time, and also only 8 weeks. So the results of the study can only be extrapolated to an 8-week period, to the population studied, by the way, in the circumstances in which they were in. I mean, these people don't even understand that time itself is a confounding variable, isn't it? In many such cases, such as this one. Of honey, so what kind of honey as well, can provide beneficial effects. No, not can, because can means that it must have been shown to causally provide these benefits, not to mention that you cannot establish any beneficial effects, because you cannot establish causality in the study, and in this field of science. On body weight, so what do you mean beneficial effects on body weight? That's a begging the question fallacy, isn't it? That's a subjective interpretation. That's a value judgment statement. Because is every single decrease in body weight, no matter what the weight is made up of, and no matter how it's lost, a good thing? Is that beneficial? According to whom? On the basis of what? And blood lipids. Oh, well, we already covered that, didn't we? We already covered that. So this entire thing is a begging the question fallacy as well, of diabetic patients. So also, this study can only be extrapolated to a population of diabetic patients. However, since an increase, okay, so he just highlighted this. This is what I'm talking about. Do I really need to go to this study, a review on the protective effects of honey against metabolic syndrome? No, we don't have to. And again, what was the degree of difference? Were the differences statistically significant? And what was the signal to noise ratio reflected with the standard deviation, not a standard error, like James DiNicolantonio doesn't seem to know how to discern between? I already covered that in one of my videos on him, okay? You do not know how to engage in statistical inference, okay? Was there sampling bias as well? I'd be curious. Anyway, this all points to a simple truth that cannot be left out of the conversation. Oh, wow. Paul, tell us all about truth, Paul. Naturally occurring sugars from fruit/honey work differently in the human body than processed sugars. No, that's your opinion. That's reductionism. The science cannot inform upon that. And also on a chemical basis, a hard science, those molecules are the exact same. No matter the source, Paul. Oh my God. See, Glucose Goddess also understands this. She's a better resource than you are. Tenfold. Paul, so do not fear sugar. Well, we already covered fear. We already covered fear, Paul, not fear. From fruit or honey, or the insulin spike that comes with it. Yeah, basically just spike your sugar, spike your insulin, and deal with it. With fruit and honey, but with fruit that is actually a man-made invention, because we have hybridized and grafted this fruit for thousands of years now. Fruit is not the same as it even was 100 or 200 years ago. Paul wants to pretend like it is, and it's not. It's not. It's a cope. So insulin, too, is a vital hormone. Yes, we know that it's vital and it has a purpose, or else the body wouldn't produce it, Paul. You need insulin. Okay, preserves muscle tissue. Yes, consume enough protein. Improves antioxidant status. Well, I have no idea what the mechanism is behind that, but let's say that's correct. Consume enough protein. Helps maintain proper electrolyte balance. Yes, consume enough protein. Aids in nutrient transport. Yes, consume enough protein. Good, but here's the most dangerous thing about anti-glucose spike formulas. Well, this begs the question as to whether or not I support them just on the basis of me not supporting glucose spikes. I don't support these formulas. Cut the sugar out. Not only does it potentially encourage metabolically healthy people to miss out on the amazing benefits of natural carbohydrate sources. Oh, what you're basically saying is not only does it potentially encourage metabolically healthy people to miss out on that good tasting stuff, miss out on perpetuating and maintaining their addiction. Yeah, good, great. These anti-spike formulas essentially gives people a free pass to continue eating processed foods while thinking they're solving the problem. Wow. So it allows people to perpetuate their addiction to carbohydrates, Paul? That's rich coming from you. Just pop a few pills and eat whatever you want. Sounds pretty appealing, right? Yeah, exactly. This is why I don't support it. Cut the sugar out, Paul, from every source. Check this out from Glucose Goddess's anti-spike formula website. Anti-spike works on all your favorite carbs and sugars, and it gives all the bread, pizza, French. Yeah, so this is a big, major problem. It's ridiculous, and this should be stopped. Two things can be true at once, guys. These aren't mutually exclusive. Yes, her formula lets you eat all your favorite carbs and sugars, candy, pizza, French fries, cookies, enjoy them all while ignoring food quality. So tell us all about food quality, Paul. Again, perhaps the intention is good. And yes, the ingredients can work to lower postprandial glucose spikes, but it creates a slippery slope by ignoring what actually causes metabolic dysfunction / glucose intolerance in the first place. Oh, glucose intolerance. Yeah, good. Define that, Paul. And also, we covered it. Cut out all sugars because chemically speaking, they're all the same. Easier and more profitable to sell a supplement than tell people to fundamentally change their lifestyle though, right? It's so funny, the crossover here. Because he wants to pretend like he's some sanctimonious figure because he actually believes this. He wants to say, well, it's so obvious, just cut it out. I'm like, why would you perpetuate addiction, bro? Fruit, honey. Let me pour honey on my beef because I'm such an addict. Let me drink honey in the mornings. Wow. Now, are there unique cases where even fruit, sugar, or honey might need to be moderated? Define moderate, Paul. Define moderate. That is a relative term, and therefore, since it's relative, it leaves it up to the person moderating to determine what that is. You want to talk about a slippery slope, Paul? That's it. Sure. Like I said, it's all about context. Well, here's some context that's important to understand as to whether or not you should be consuming fruit and honey. Okay? Are you a human being of the genome Homo sapien? Because if you are, stop consuming fruit and honey. Stop it. If you are severely obese, diabetic / pre-diabetic, well, hold on a minute, Paul. Didn't you just say that honey improves diabetes in the previous studies? So now you're contradicting yourself. Or have a family history of diabetes. Oh, so now you're wanting to talk about family history of diabetes. When you literally explicitly say in your videos, it doesn't matter what your family history is, it matters what you're doing. Which is true, actually. You know what? My grandfather actually has had a history of diabetes. So, you know what? There we go. So it just further justifies, even according to Paul's logic, I shouldn't be consuming fruit and honey. Like, even by that logic alone does not suffice. That doesn't logically mean that we shouldn't be consuming fruit and honey. The reasons that logically prove that we shouldn't be consuming fruit and honey are things that I've already laid out in the beginning. Not whether or not you have a family history of diabetes. What? So it doesn't even make sense, even according to his own logic. Even to entertain his own logic, jump in his ring for a minute and fight with his tools, for example. It doesn't work. You might want to scale back carbohydrates based on activity levels. Yeah, that too. You might want to scale them back down to 0, irrespective of activity levels though, too. Unless you're engaging in activity that is incongruous and high in a way that's far more intensive than we would have ever experienced, genotypically speaking, and ancestrally speaking. Maybe then you pop a glucose gel of 5 grams. Tim Noakes talks about this, actually. But that's something that, you know what, you might not even need that for that. And again, we're talking about minuscule amounts, dude. Minuscule, okay? And eating fruit may cause your blood sugar to spike more than it would mine, as I'm metabolically healthy. Well, that's your opinion, okay? Because metabolic health is a construct, Paul, okay? Define that in objective terms. You'd get that wrong, guarantee it. And also, so now you're indicating that a blood sugar spike to a certain degree, to a certain level, actually will be harmful. So you just contradicted yourself multiple times in this one newsletter. But that's just a symptom of the fact that your metabolic machinery is broken. No, your body is supposed to have a glucose spike when you consume glucose. In the case of someone that has it spike to the degree that you're talking about, same thing there. It's supposed to spike to that degree. All disease is external, Paul. The insulin resistance isn't the pathology. Okay? Insulin resistance is exactly what the body is supposed to do given the circumstances in any form. Physiological insulin resistance, peripheral insulin resistance, as it's also known as, and also what's considered pathological insulin resistance, which once again isn't pathological. It is supposed to happen, Paul. The problem is something external, not what the genes are doing. What is the externality concerned? What is the implicated externality? It's the carbohydrates. Oh my God. In fact, when I look at the research Glucose Goddess uses, it is entirely in people who have diabetes and underlying metabolic dysfunction. So extrapolating this for the general population is very unwise. You just did that. You just did that, Paul. Wow. I did not expect this to be that bad. You guys do realize I'm reacting live 99% of the time to these things. Okay? Again, all about authenticity. I don't have a script. I don't have any of that stuff unless I explicitly say I'm reading off of a paper in front of me, which you can see because my eyes go down here. Okay? But those are still my words. I'm reading a paper I wrote. I did not expect this at all. Take your own advice, Paul. Even then, anything less than 100 grams a day, in my opinion, is not ideal for most humans. Oh my God. Holy shit. You should be consuming, no matter if you're obese or not, at least 100 grams of carbohydrates a day, according to Paul fucking Saladino. This is dangerous. This is offensively wrong, frankly. So listen, do not fear these foods. Covered fear, you should abstain. Absolutely. Fact. Consume them in the context of your life. Yes, my life as a Homo sapien. So 0. If you're not as active or you're still trying to repair your metabolic health, you don't need to eat as many carbohydrates as I do. So then don't eat them at all, Paul. I mean, this is amazing, isn't it? This is amazing. Here he is sitting here saying, well, you shouldn't be taking a supplement because in reality you should just fix the problem, right? You just fix the problem. And then he's sitting here saying, fix the problem by consuming the thing that's causing the problem. And then also, once you fix the problem, which is due to this thing, at least in my opinion, not the thing that's actually causing it, but this thing, then you can start doing that thing again whenever you fix the problem. There's contradictions in his own logical framework. His logical framework is flawed, but he's also contradicting himself using his own logical framework. You know how idiotic you have to be to do that? This gets highly philosophical, but seriously, I mean, this is really, you're not eliminating the root cause. But once you do, then introduce the root cause back to perpetuate your addiction, just as long as you don't do it, you don't go overboard. Yeah, good, okay. But please, don't fall for the narrative that all sugars are inherently harmful and need to be blocked with supplements. We already covered that, didn't we? I'm not repeating myself. I'm exhausting myself. I'm exhausted. Address the root cause of metabolic dysfunction instead. Yeah, okay. Define metabolic dysfunction. According to whom, on the basis of what, as measured by what, and also really what you should do. Instead of, if you want to address your illnesses, knowing that illnesses are all, fundamentally speaking, caused by external sources, adopt an indicated lifestyle from every hard inference we have. And if you want to learn more about that, read my book, Contraindicated. It walks you through it. Hard sciences, okay? Not this bread and circuses bullshit. Remove seed oils from your diet, yes. Eat nutrient-dense animal foods. Well, eat the species-appropriate, species-specific diet, basically, which doesn't involve seed oils, so remove that, which does involve ruminant animal meat. It's the best approximation to what we were consuming ancestrally speaking, because the megafauna are dead, so we have to find the best approximation, which is going to be cattle, okay? That is grass-fed, of course, but if it's grain-fed and that's all you can afford, eat that, okay? Context does matter in your life, like Paul said. See, I'm basically using his tenets, and I'm actually responsibly applying them and tapping into them, referencing them. He's inappropriately and irresponsibly doing so. Okay, get sunlight daily. Yes, of course. Just don't overdo that because you can burn. Just try and work your way up in the tolerance hierarchy. Okay, prioritize sleep. Well, of course. Manage stress, distress. Yes. Move your body regularly. Great. So quite vague, but fine. That's how you truly fix the problem. Yeah, you missed one. It's eliminate carbohydrates. Eat a species-appropriate, species-specific diet, which is not congruous with yours, Paul. Not by taking a few pills that mask symptoms while allowing you to continue making poor food choices. Yeah, tell us all about poor food choices, Paul. Welcome to the remembering, Paul. Absolutely ridiculous, guys. This is what you're getting if you sign up to Paul Saladino's newsletter. Absolutely egregious, isn't it? So, I had to cover that. I knew that it was going to be egregious. I didn't know it was going to be that bad. I'm not kidding. That was, I mean, using your own flawed logical framework that is not congruous with truth, that is not conducive to descrying truth, therefore, you are contradicting yourself using your own tools, so your own logic. I mean, so it's like, it's a double whammy. Also, I looked at Glucose Goddess's research and I realized that she's using results in studies that are using a demographic of people that are diabetic. You can't extrapolate those to a general population. Paul, you just did that. You just did that. Oh my God. Those carbohydrates really aren't helping your brain power, are they? Okay? I mean, first it's acid-base balance, a complete failure to understand acid-base. And then it's carbohydrate. Well, first it's carbohydrates, then it's acid-base balance, then it's carbohydrates again. Give me a break. Anyway, okay, we're done with this. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, leave your thoughts about this in the comment section below, by the way. Also, buy my book, once again, Contraindicated, a closer look and revision of mainstream health axioms that have perpetuated illness, disorder, and disease for over a century. If you have not bought that book already, hardcover, paperback, and audiobook versions are in the description below. I have finally, fortunately for you guys, if you've stuck to this point in the video, if you've stuck here long enough, here's your surprise. I found a way to get my ebook into a reflowable format, and therefore able to be uploaded to basically every single platform that allows ebooks to be sold. Kindle, Barnes & Noble, Apple Books, for example, Google Play, all that stuff. And I can get it done relatively quickly, by the way. I finally found a way. I told you I was working on it. I finally found a way to create one. So, for people that have been waiting very patiently, you are being rewarded for that. So, also subscribe to the Patreon if you haven't already to gain access to 1 week early uploads, ad-free content, uncensored content, and an exclusive Discord server. And also, most importantly, the link on the bottom of the screen. What is that link? Well, that is a link that will bring you to an amazing site with amazing products from an amazing brand known as Cerule. If you purchase product through that link, you will get a permanent percentage discount and permanent free shipping when signing up for monthly deliveries. And if you email me behind the scenes at edgoki@pm.me, you can learn how to earn those products for free, because who in their right mind wouldn't want that? But of course, I wouldn't recommend buying any product if you don't know what they are at all. So fortunately for you, I have a video linked in the top right corner of the screen, the Cerule Products link, which is a complete video elucidation and explanation of what those products are, who should take them, why you should take them, when to take them, etc., etc. And I'd also further migrate to the description below to find a video that I did on these products in further detail, as well as the company of Cerule itself, which I think is incredibly important if you're willing to actually contribute money towards the company. Where's my money going? Well, I have a video that explains just that. So, with that being said, join me next time when we are reacting to more inanity, but not inanity to the degree that Paul expresses. Seriously. It's a new level. I mean, people like this make millions of dollars. It's amazing. So, you need to fight back, okay? So, till then.